to the Los Angeles wildfires. Among the many people fighting the flames are prisoners. Nearly 800 of them have been deployed, and they've all come from what are known as fire camps, where they're trained to help respond to fires, floods and other disasters.
But there's concern over how much support they receive, and the wages, a base rate of about $9 a day, then $1 for every hour they spent at the fire front. Carlee Purdum is an assistant professor in sociology at the University of Houston, and she says conditions for those workers can often be unfair.
The firefighters who are responding to the wildfires have been part of training programs and have received very similar training to free world firefighters when it comes to the work that they're doing. However, the work that they're doing tends to be very different than what the free world firefighters are doing. So they engage in a lot of the more very heavy manual labor, that is digging fire lines, using chainsaws and other equipment to cut down trees or brush. And what we've seen from research, from studies that are looking at, whether or not they have equitable access to the personal protective equipment can be an issue. So the incarcerated firefighters have at times been shown to be at higher risk for things like smoke inhalation. They have higher rates of needing to be treated for smoke inhalation than free world firefighters, or even contracting illnesses like valley fever. So in terms of preparedness, those can be very different things. They're also more likely to, be experiencing a lot of the injuries that come with that labor than free firefighters. So fractures, bruises. The healthcare access is a question, not just in California, but what we're seeing happen in California happens in states all across the country. California has one of the largest programs, but any state in the U.S. where wildfire is a concern, they likely operate programs like this, but they have very little oversight. And while, officials may say they have similar access to training or experience, we don't really get to hear from the actual participants.
You mentioned there just how big California's program is. Sometimes in disasters, they can rely on 30% of their firefighting force coming from people who are in jail. What's the view of Americans on this?
So there are a lot of varying perspectives. Many in the population get, very upset and outraged when they hear about this, especially when it comes to our history and laws around exploitation of prisoners, incarcerated people. And then others, will point to it and say this is a beneficial program because incarcerated people are receiving job training. This is going to help them stay out of prison. But in my own research, I've found that, programs like across the state, there are no mechanisms that hold them to any accountability in following up to that promise. So we don't know, how effective they are at keeping people out of prison, at whether or not they're able to go out and find jobs. We do know that there are a lot of policies that are in place to prevent participants from, once they are out of prison, from being able to go and find these jobs. There's also a lot of stigma and bias when free world firefighters or people in these positions talk about hiring people with a criminal record. They don't want to, give those jobs to people who are coming out of prison when they think they could give it to someone who is, in their eyes, more deserving. Or they have that bias when they see, well, where did you get your training? Who is, recommending you? They can tell even then, that they came from this program. So there's a lot of social stigma, even when we address the policy.
They do get paid. There's a base rate, a daily rate, an hourly rate of about $1.60 Australian. They might earn $40 Australian dollars a day. Some people might say, well, I'm surprised they get paid at all. But is that rate fair given their circumstances?
Well, in California, they are paid. In some states, they are not paid any wage at all. For example, in Georgia, the firefighters that are incarcerated are not paid any kind of wage. And so the justification, though, then comes back to, well, this is job training. So that's used to justify, the low wage. There are a lot of programs trying to reduce the prison population in the United States. And we've seen this in California, where their incarcerated firefighter force is significantly lowered. And in other states, even Georgia, where I've done a lot of work, and people then become very critical of those efforts to reduce the population, because how are we going to fight our wildfires if we don't have, this cheap and accessible labor force of primarily young men who can be used to respond and who do not have rights to be paid the same force or same resources that free world firefighters do, or to have the same death benefits, or there's a myriad of protections that they don't have or that their families do not have because they're incarcerated. So it creates this vulnerable population of workers, but it also continues an incentive to not support programs that would reduce that population. So there's a real conflict between criminal justice reform and programs like this that rely on this, low-cost labor force to fight these disasters.
Carlee Purdum from the University of Houston, thank you very much for your time and your insight on Weekend Breakfast.
Thank you.